see if this is Mark's place here. I don't know. Looks like it might be. Is this Mark's studio? Excuse me. I'm looking for Mark's studio.
This is where I do the bulk of my oil paintings. And this is stuff that's starting and I'm exploring abstract work. Comes out of here. Comes out of here. Between here and here. In your solar plexus.
Right there.
Not your balls. But it comes out of gut. You put down a line and you go, okay, there's possibility. And you do a shape, you go, that's a possibility. Or you get somebody else say, let's try this, and then you try it, physically try it, and then you can start to judge whether or not you've really got something there or not. This turns out to be an image of an artist's hands, that I really loved. And so he posed for me. I looked at it this way. And suddenly the whole thing changed to me. There was an incongruity to the reality. This is Foxy. Her real name is Elaine Greenhow. This is a blow up from my high school yearbook picture. And this is what she wrote on there, of course, but I put it written backwards as if she's looking back at it. We've had our little differences, but will we always remain ace pals? Because sometimes I feel like I'm compulsive about this stuff, and I don't know what I'm doing. And every work I start, I don't think I know what I'm doing with it or how I'm going to solve it. So this artwork has grown for years. These flames have been used in about 4 other sculptures in the past, all the time looking for a proper solution for it. One of the things I felt socially conscious about the Tulsa revelations of last year. And these were originally just simply bars, as in prison bars. And then after the Tulsa revelations, I turned them into crosses. So I'm thinking about putting this on the bottom, possibly with chain like this, so that they would suspend, like sheets. It's sheets blowing in the wind. The black that is just in there is just is crude. Is rough. So the covering over of the Tulsa event being whitewashed applies into these letters. This is John Lewis and the complexities of integration that he has faced in his tenure. Really sharp white shirt and a black suit jacket, because he's a style. This is the piece that I've done after George Floyd's death. It's a maquette for a monument. George at 14 feet tall, which is exactly the same height as Michelangelo's David. Up here would be lights that would be colored lights that would be changed every minute. You would get a concept of time, how long the George Floyd was under the boot of Foreman's foot. All right, this piece is called Self-Portrait, Allegory of Denial. Here's a guy covering over his eyes so he can't see reality, and he's holding reality in his hand, represented by a pendulum, the ancient instrument of vertical measure. I'm surrounded by various bits and pieces of the reality of my life. John Lennon's up in the upper corner, my hero, a nude painting in the background, coffee cup, which I live on, paintbrushes, and of course a sculpture that's in the hills of Montoni that I made, a proportion wheel referencing my days of graphic designer, and a bunch of other things floating around, including a quote by Maya Angelou that says, "Artists, get off your butts. This is your time to express yourself about what's going on in the world." There's also a thing added a little fun, which was the Birkenstocks are not in reality green and blue. I wanted do a work that showed the relationship between myself and my friends. So this profile is me on all of these panels. And this is my girlfriend. And this is my ex-wife and my good friend John. And this way I can see what kind of a relationship, height relationship I had with these friends. I've chosen to do these colors to show the indication of the kind of the personality of the relationship that exists between the two of us. In this case, it's very much of an equality balance between Diana and myself. This is my ex-wife, and it refers to historical stuff around us. Here is John Uvardi, who was a wonderful wood sculptor, and I've put in these three-dimensional type objects, which is kind of what he does with his work, is putting together objects that are disparate, but somehow they work beautifully together. And the opportunity came up for me to go back to school, to the Art Institute of San Francisco, which, and I took that opportunity. And one of the possibilities was to get credit for working more than 300 miles away from the school. Yeah, in my 40s. So everybody was like 21 and a half. So I said, well, if you can go more than 300 miles, why don't I just go make more like 6,000 miles? Made arrangements to go work at a friend's studio. He didn't speak any English, I didn't speak any Italian. While I was not learning a tremendous about how he worked, I just was absorbing Italy. So those are the things that go on one part of the palette. Renoir might have done, or Maya Lin, you know, might be, how would she address this if she was looking at it? How would Rothko look at it? You know, there's, you know, I mean, how would an artist that I don't like look at it, for instance? So there's like, you know, you got this like on the other side of the palette is all this stuff that has come into your life during the course of your life as an artist, and see what you can take from that. My most recent work called for some Van Gogh-ish paint strokes. So I pull some Van Gogh off the side of the palette, mix it up with the other side of the palette, which is the stuff I've learned about proportions and design, and voila, I can put all of that stuff onto the painting. So the painting is a repository of a lot of different influences. This is homage to, this is a portrait of Copernicus, and this idea is, this is the sun, and this is the planets that revolve my own welding. This was made in Italy. I've been doing a lot of these chairs, and they've sold somewhat. This is called a series of the badly repaired chair. Several, they're in a few collections. Okay, this is a piece called Copapelli, which is the Mexican flute player, and in its evolution, because this didn't start this way. These pieces kind of grew and got modified. So this is where he wound up being. And so then, once I saw what it was, who he was, then he suddenly had a name and he had a place in the world. Let me try this again. In order to get to where I get to, I have to not know where I'm going. So I don't know how the thing is going to end up, and that's the important thing, is to go for it, in spite of the fact that I don't know where it's going. This is the essence of what I was just talking about not knowing where I'm going. So this is called Follow Your Heart, and it's based on the walking off of a stable surface. And stable surface is what other artists and what you know already exists. And as a creative person, you've got to step off of that, what you know, into what you trust, what you have faith in. And that's this step, and you follow your heart, which is really kind of following your gut instincts or your belief or your faith, and make that step. So this is called time, and it's the concept of trying to keep time, contain time, or contain a memory. Extrapolating that, you go into can you keep what was into now? And of course you can't keep time. So that's this open cage. In the background is a drawing I made of a guy sitting at a bar in Belgium having a coffee. And so I went from that drawing book and I painted him just sitting there having a coffee. Well, it was kind of boring having him just sit there have a coffee. So I started to say, okay, what else can I do with this guy? I said, okay, well let's make him an artist, and let's make him sketching an imaginary figure. So this is a dream, like you've seen people just sitting at someplace and just kind of like staring off into space. Well, he's remembering, or he's imagining his model, being that she's young, he's old. It's kind of has this play between the two of them. And when I was younger, I used to get a coffee and have a shot of tequila and a cigarette and sit around and do my drawing. Okay, this is a pastel that's started years and years and years ago, and finally it's come to, I think, resolve itself. So that was, and then in fact, actually it got carried over to other paintings that I've done. This is called Critical Review. And there are these, I imagine these as if these two guys were looking at sculpture or artwork and they were making their comments about it. And simultaneously, they are the sculpture. And there's this faux, including a faux shadow in the back, as if the light was illuminating them. And then I put it on wheels to make it even more funny, because they could then roam around to a museum or gallery and make their comments. Gentle persuasion can move rigidity. So this kind of reads from right to left, and there's just this gentle push by the races, and also pastel colors. So you get masculine, feminine things being played in here, and you get the stripes refer to prison stripes are rigid formality, and the silver ones are bars, also rigid. Came from a piece of wood, and because I wanted to make a lamp out of her, but I cut through here with my saw and couldn't go any further because the saw stopped me. And I saw an eye, a mouth, a nose. I saw legs or breasts, arms or breasts, and legs and knees and feet. And I go, it's alive! I could do anything I wanted because I didn't know where this was going, but I had the restriction of the shape. This is just a shape I made, and I didn't know what to do with it, so I skinned it. But interestingly enough, the person who owns this building gave me his sheepskin, diplomas from his schools. So this has been skinned with sheepskin, real sheepskin, the legit stuff. And then I started to break down the areas. At first I broke them down into the rectangles that made up the interior of the space. And then I started to break those down into further rectangles and break away from the rigidity of the stack. I've been doing this since before I was born, and I've been doing it ever since. My age is pushing 78. I studied at the Butera School of Art in Boston for commercial art, but one of the best things about that was, one, I've met a really great teacher, and the other is we drew from life 50% of the time. I want them to work on a multitude of levels, and this one is very successful in my opinion. And then when I look at it again, I see fingers intertwined. The other side of the palette, which is the proportions and design, and voila, I can put all of that stuff onto the painting. So the painting is a repository of a lot of different influences. I make art because I have to make art. It's a part of my body. It's in the cellular structure. If there was a choice to do something else, I'd do it, but it wouldn't be as much fun.